Have you ever imagined just standing in an Apple store, casually checking your email, completely unaware that across the country your face is plastered on a missing persons poster? Like you haven't been kidnapped, you've actually been erased by your own brain.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we're so conditioned by true crime documentaries to just picture yellow police tape and foul play, right? We want these missing persons cases to be clear-cut mysteries, but the reality of why people vanish without a trace is infinitely more complex and honestly a lot more unsettling.
Exactly. So today we're taking a deep dive into the hidden reality of missing persons. We're looking at, well, decades of cold case data, clinical psychology records, and a truly mind-bending psychiatric phenomenon to figure out what actually happens when someone disappears. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, so to grasp the reality here, you have to look at the sheer scale of it first. National databases show that at any given moment, up to 100,000 people are actively missing in the U.S.
100,000. Wait, that is literally an entire small city just gone.
Yeah, an entire city. And when you look closely at the cold case clusters, like especially from the 1980s onwards, there's this massive concentration in the West, which heavily correlates with areas containing vast unnavigable state and national parks.
Right, but I have to push back on the implication here a little bit. I mean, you say 100,000 are missing, but how many of those are actual mysteries?
Hmm.
Because legally, adults have the absolute right to just, walk away from their lives. Aren't our perceptions warped by the media? Like, don't law enforcement agencies just deprioritize these cases because they assume people want to be gone?
That's a really crucial point, and it's exactly what happens. Because, well, it's not inherently a crime for an adult to pack up and leave. Police often treat adult disappearances with way less urgency than, say, a child abduction.
Right, they just assume it's a desire for a fresh start.
Exactly.
It makes you realize we're so fixated on people getting physically lost in a forest or running off to start a new life that we completely ignore the fact that they might be trying to escape their own minds.
Yeah, and the clinical data paints a really heavy reality that completely shatters that media stereotype. It turns out 8 out of 10 missing adults suffer from underlying mental health problems.
Wait, really? 8 out of 10? That completely flips the script.
It does. What's fascinating here is that missing isn't always a crime. It is, in the vast majority of cases, a veritable mental health crisis moment. The physical disappearance is really just a symptom of profound psychological distress.
So, if an adult can consciously choose to walk away, what happens when their brain makes that choice for them? I mean, erasing their identity in the process.
You're talking about dissociative fugue.
Yes. I eagerly wanted to get into this. I was reading about it in the clinical records, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. Like the case of Hannah Up. She was a teacher who vanished, but she's the one I mentioned earlier who was spotted at the Apple store while actively missing.
Right, checking her email.
Yeah. She had absolutely no idea who she was or that she was missing. How does the brain just delete itself like that?
It's incredibly surreal, I know. If we connect this to the bigger picture, fugue is a rare, complex neuropsychological defense mechanism. Think of it sort of like a circuit breaker in a house.
Okay, follow.
Right, so when there's a massive power surge of extreme or prolonged trauma, the brain literally trips the main breaker to prevent the whole house from burning down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the lights just go out on their identity, their memories, their entire past, but the body keeps running on emergency power.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. They aren't faking it, right? Like, it's not a performance to escape debt or a bad marriage.
No, not at all. The person legitimately forgets who they are and wanders away. Their brain has essentially decided that remembering is too dangerous to their survival.
That's wild.
And sometimes they even build completely new identities, fully believing that's who they've always been, just to fill the void.
It's terrifying, but also kind of incredible what the mind will do to protect itself. But if the tragedy doesn't end when someone is found, like what actually happens after they return?
Well, that brings us to a really devastating aftermath. Because our system treats missing persons as police mysteries rather than health crises, returnees rarely get the clinical support they need.
Because they walk right back into the trauma that triggered it.
Exactly. They walk right back into that stress. And the data reveals that without immediate mental health intervention upon returning, 20% of these formerly missing individuals ultimately commit suicide.
Wow. 1 in 5. So what does this all mean? For you listening, I think it means we desperately need a fundamental shift in perspective. We have to stop viewing missing persons purely as true crime entertainment and start treating them as public health emergencies.
I completely agree. This raises such an important question about how we allocate our resources. Like, do we just fund search parties? Or do we fund the psychological care necessary to catch the vulnerable before they reach that breaking point?
Exactly. When we started this deep dive, we asked what happens when someone vanishes without a trace. Often, it's the mind trying to escape an internal wilderness.
Very true.
Which leaves you with this final thought to ponder. If the human brain possesses a biological switch that can completely sever your connection to your own identity just to protect you from trauma, how much of the self you consider permanent is actually just a fragile illusion?